Okay, so this is the first episode of Hollywood and Shelter in Place. And I'm your host, Kat Smith. And with me, I have Peter Engler, who is an author and a business coach. And if you listen to my radio show, Hollywood and West Napa, on 91.3 KSVY Sonoma, you may remember him calling in to talk about his book, The Unselling of the President. But today, we're going to focus on your business coaching and ways we can get through the stay-at-home orders and beyond.
Great.
So you are my first
Good morning,
guest.
everybody.
You are my first guest since sheltering in place. Why don't you give us a little bit about your business background?
Okay. I grew up in the East Coast. I went to Bucknell University, flew airplanes in the Navy during Vietnam, joined the advertising industry in New York City, and then moved west to San Francisco at Ampex Corporation, marketing consumer audio tape, and then joined Foot Cone & Belding, J. Walter Thompson, on things like Sony monitors, Clorox, Levi's, etc. And then I was VP marketing for Citibank in New York in the late 80s. I then became an executive recruiter for 12 years, retained with 5 partners in the San Francisco area. And one of the things I realized when I was being a recruiter was that a lot of executives, men and women with great backgrounds and a lot of achievements, didn't really know how to present themselves to a recruiter. They kind of thought we were going to, I don't know, just move them on to the client. It's not the way it works. With anybody you meet in a job search or a career search process, those people all have an impact on your candidacy. And a recruiter is really a gatekeeper. They're going to want to introduce the right people to their clients. They're being paid by the client in most cases. And so their allegiance is first to the client, but certainly to you, the candidate, because they want to make sure that you don't take a position that's not right for you. But the thing I noticed was that people just didn't have their act together. They didn't have their resume well prepared. They didn't have their story. They didn't even know quite why they wanted the job we were talking about. And so I decided to go to Right Management in 2001 when the market turned down on search, and ran the senior executive outplacement division. And there we had a program that you're probably all familiar with. There are a lot of companies that do outplacement. And the idea is to get you reorganized, refocused, and re-energized around your search. And that means re-energized around yourself.
Mm-hmm. And then the title of your book is, Your Crystal Clear, yes, hold it up. Your Crystal Clear Career Path.
Oh, that's, yes, Crystal Clear Career Path.
Featuring smart, new, and effective job search strategies. Find rewarding work, not just a job. And what prompted you to write it?
What prompted me to write the book was that I ceased being a career coach after about 15 years. I now focus on my writing novels and stuff. And so I wanted to put what I think I'd learned into a book. And Your Crystal Clear Career Path is anything but that. It's almost a joke or an aside. But the more you focus on a plan, the more you organize yourself and your goals and your resources, the better off you'll be. So there are a number of brief chapters in the book. It's available on Kindle and hardcover at Amazon. And they're just observations about what it takes to stand out. One of the things, while you're now sequestered in place and having lots of time in your hands, perhaps, is that one of the things you might do is draw a 40-mile circle around where you live, and then find out what companies are located there. That's really your search environment, your region that you should be most concerned about. And the idea is, whether you're employed now or whether you're going to be unemployed at some time or want to change careers, any one of those 3 things, you should be really smart about what companies exist in your area of influence that you want to work at. Because the first question you want to answer for somebody, particularly to yourself, is where do I want to work and why do I want to work there? So look all those companies up on the internet, learn about them, get a sense of what they do and how that matches up with your interests and abilities. Look at the press release section and see what products and services they're focusing on, what they're marketing, where they're putting their money and attention. Look at the bios of the executives and the board members, importantly. If you're over 50, you should be starting to think about reaching out to board members because they're your peers. They're people who have had a lot of experience. They're on the board of the company, and they are interested in its success, obviously. Nobody ever reaches out to board members to meet them to get a sense of whether they might fit in that company. Why don't you do that? And look at the lineup, see which board members seem to have some similarity to you and your interests, and email them. Tell them briefly why you're doing it. You like the company, you're interested in what they're doing. You read about what they're doing on the press release section, so you're current. Then the next paragraph is, I have a little bit of a background in those areas, et cetera, et cetera. And then third paragraph is basically, I'd like to meet you. Now, you can't do that in person these days, but you certainly can do it on Zoom like we're doing, on the phone or whatever. So ask them for some time just to talk to them about what's up and how you might be able to help them. But this is your long-term homework. You should have 8, 10 companies that you really are super smart about. So when you do talk to them or meet somebody along the way, you'll be ready to chat with them about what's going on.
So I've been saying that this is kind of a world of pessimistic optimism. I heard somebody on the news recently say that it's like we're going really fast in slow motion. So it almost feels strange to try to still work on a business while all of this other stuff is going on. Yet it's so important to still work on your business, even though tragedy is happening around us at the same time. Do you have any advice for people who are kind of feeling like maybe that's a little indulgent to work on your business? Because I think it's still important. It feels like a long thing, but it is a temporary thing in the grand scheme of things.
Well, you should always be working on yourself and your business. You are your, so many words, you are your business. Whether you're employed in a company or independent or whatever, it's all you. And with situations like this, where we're now on various platforms like Zoom, don't let down your guard. Make sure that you're looking presentable, that your hair's cut. Don't lapse into like a B mode of behavior where you say, well, you know, I can't go anywhere, so I'm going to reorient my behavior. Stay sharp, stay with it. One thing during this period of time you might consider is developing a website for yourself, a couple of pages. These are easily done on various sites. Wix is terrific. I've done a number of pages for myself. Or have somebody like Kat develop it for you, where you present yourself and so that you can say to somebody, you know, you can learn more about me at my my website. My resume's there, some other things, some of my work.
And to piggyback on that, you know, another thing you can look at too is that if you are kind of stalled in a holding pattern, to look at that website, like I myself need to do, but I've still been busy, luckily, knock on wood. But look at your website and look for things that are outdated, and look at your social media and look for things that are outdated and see where you can update things. Keep busy.
Yeah, and look at your LinkedIn page. Make sure that it's current, interesting. Yeah, it's in the devil's in the details, and people have more time now. Even people who are recruiting for positions, that's still going on. And they're looking at your social media profile and everything that's said about you. And now's the time that you, with some time in your hands, that you can go and clean house, spring cleaning.
So, because the first chapter is available to preview on Amazon, can we touch a little bit on the 3 phases of your career clarity process?
Well, the, uh, the 3 parts are develop your resources, your tools, go back and get your resume done, your bio, get your homework squared away. And then the middle process is going to market. And then the third process is following up, following up, following up. One of the things people get frustrated is that people don't respond to their emails. That's going to be even more of a problem now because people will be getting many more contacts via computer, internet processes. There's less interface going on, so people have to rely more on the computer and email, etc. Don't be frustrated by this. Realize that people have less time to be responsive, and just find ways every week or two to follow up with people that you're trying to stay in touch with, that you want to impress, that you want to connect with, and just say hello, hope all is well. Here's an article I found that you might find of interest. Just be present. When I was a recruiter, we would meet pretty much everybody who called us about a job opportunity. That was a little unusual, as recruiters are known not to be that open and responsive unless somebody's a particularly perfect match for a search that they're conducting. But the idea was certain people would call me and politely and pleasantly say hello every 2 or 3 weeks. And one of the things they would say that I thought was smart was, can I help you with any of your searches? And I found that fairly impressive and mature. And those people stood out in my mind. So the whole idea in a job search, especially if you're over 50, you want to impress people with the fact that you're here to help. You're not looking for a big title anymore. You're not looking for a parking place. You're not concerned with secondary issues. You're concerned with helping them. And all you want to know is what areas do they need help in, and then consider how you might support them and volunteer some of those ideas. You're here to help. That's why anybody is hired in a company. Companies are looking for people to help. Practice that idea. Here to help.
And you mentioned specifically over 50. And so the audience for your book is, what would you say, 45 and up?
Audience is actually college grad on up, because there's all sorts of basic information in there. It really is important that you shine your shoes and show up early for the interview. That you say hello to the receptionist, because she's been there for 10 years and she's probably one of the quiet evaluators of anybody that comes in for a job interview.
Yeah.
She's probably the first one that gets a call after you go out the front door saying, what'd you think of him or her? And she'll have a point of view, and you can help that point of view if you come, hand her a business card when you come in. Hi, I'm Peter Engler. I'm here to meet Mr. Smith, and I'd like you to have my card. And you are now complimenting her in her role as a gatekeeper at that company. Little procedures like that really count for a lot.
Yeah, that brings me back to my theater days. There was always a disconnect between crew and the actors, and I always thought that was so strange because I was just nice to everybody, and I found not doing it intentionally. I wasn't being nice to the crew to get something in return, but I found that over time that really did help me out, and that's just in the theater world.
Yep, everybody counts in your search, and don't forget that. One of my friends got a job by getting a tip from his Safeway clerk 10 years ago. She somehow knew of this opportunity. And he took advantage of that tip because she liked him and he liked her, was checking out groceries. And he was gracious with her every time. Well, that had a good result.
I had another question about your audience for this book. If somebody already has an established business, or they're pretty sure they're on the right career path, would you suggest that there's lessons in here that could also help them better what they're already doing?
I think any book like this has ideas in it that make sense for people. One of my chapters is smile, smile, smile. And sometimes when you have your own business, it's tough to smile, especially these days. But smiling is infectious. It relaxes people around you. It makes them feel like you're with them instead of perhaps against them, that you're an ally. So smiling, even more so today, is probably important. Hard to do behind a mask, but I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah. And then before we wrap up the interview, I feel like there's two groups of people that are stuck at home in the stay-at-home orders, and I'd like to get your advice for each group, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the first group of people I see are those who just can't go to work for whatever reason because their job has been deemed non-essential. Why might now be a good time for them to think about whether that's what they want to go back to, or whether maybe they want to be somewhere higher up in the world?
Well, you've certainly got more time to think, unless you've got 3 or 4 little kids around that are keeping you quite busy. Um, my wife and I are sequestering in place, and it's almost like business as usual for us. But I'm sure with Kat and other people, with kids to take care of, that's a whole new dimension. But the environment you find yourself in now is a novel one because of this novel virus. And you can certainly look around and see what is working for you that you never were aware of before. What can you glean from getting groceries delivered to your door? We had some groceries ordered and they were on their way here and they never showed up. So there's a security issue to grocery delivery systems that maybe you'd have an idea about. So look around at how things are happening now, what the new paradigms are that have to be serviced with new ideas, and think about what you might do to improve that.
And
Also,
then,
you might also think about exercising things you haven't in the past, like have you always wanted to write a book? Now's an interesting time to go ahead and write a book. All you need is an idea for a book. You've got a book in you. Everybody has something they want to talk about, stories or, fiction, nonfiction ideas. But take a chance to start writing things down. Have a journal. Start a journal. It sounds a little fatuous, perhaps, but people who have journaled really appreciate the fact they started it.
I actually have been journaling since day one of stay-at-home orders, and I'm now at something like 37,000 words. I've had a lot to think about.
The words come. Once you get started, they come. And one idea is, if you think you have a book in you, sit down and try to write chapter headings for 10 or 15 chapters. Those headlines will then spur you on to fill in the blanks underneath those headlines. And you might end up actually having something there. But it's one technique to writing a book that I use in my Got Book practice, where I help people get started and get over the hump of, I can't write, I can't do that. Everybody can write. They just have to start doing it with somebody to guide them.
You know what? Let's pause on my other audience and tackle that for a second. Let's talk about that business that you have. What do you do for people, and how do they work with you?
Basically, I have an 8-session program that lasts about 20 weeks, and that 20 weeks is really based on you, the writer. I've worked with several people now. 2 people have written books. They've gotten to manuscript stage with a book. And one fellow is writing a play for his organization when they come back into business, so to speak. And what I guide people on is, first of all, an orientation to writing. Who is your target audience for your book? What's your key message? Do you have a hero in mind that saves the world? Do you have a product in mind, a new service in mind, or a new way of approaching business in mind? What's the style of the book? Is it suspense? Is it exposition, humor, historical fiction, etc.? And then, are you thinking about a book, or are you thinking about a novella? A novella is 160, 80 pages. Sounds like you can do that. Novels are 250, 350, 400 pages or more. And then the next thing you do is you just kind of briefly outline the book, just kind of from A to Z, what do you think would unfold? And then the next stage would be write down headlines for each chapter as you go along. And then try to write a couple of chapters. And don't edit, don't think about what you're doing right and wrong. Just write on, as I say. And then you start tightening it up, writing the whole book. And at the end of this 20 weeks or so, you will have a manuscript that you then can take to people that I'm familiar with, and Kat is, and others, who will edit it, organize it on Word for launching on Amazon Books or elsewhere, and then helping you market your book online. None of this is easy, but it's a lot of fun.
And it is easier these days than it has been in the past with all of the self-publishing options.
Actually, my novel, I've had my novel with a friend of mine who's a producer in LA for about 4 months. And he just got a call from Netflix. And they said, we're sort of interested in that idea. My novel's about an advertising guy, an ex-Navy jet pilot. Now he's a hotshot in New York City. And he gets hired to write a re-election campaign for a president in 1992, a fictitious president. And he goes there, gets underway with working on the re-election campaign, meets Laura, the beautiful presidential assistant, runs into his old flying buddy, Chet, who's the Secret Service head for the president. And they stumble into a plot to assassinate the president once he's reelected. And so Ben has to rely on his own talent, courage, and insights, because nobody else is going to believe him. What's an ad guy know about a threat? So the novel evolves from that. And it's basically a story of a smart guy, gets himself in the ringer, has to figure his way out with his friend's help, and succeeds in whatever endeavor he's trying to do. Hollywood apparently likes that kind of stuff, and we'll see. Could be fun. You never know.
Yeah, I'm knocking on wood right now. So back to the second group of people who are stuck at home. These I consider more, and we talked a little bit about this, but the entrepreneurs and self-employed people. Some services are still really needed right now, like coaching services, what you're doing helping people write books. There's a lot of people who can still work from home, but maybe they're not trying to. Maybe they're sucking themselves into that vacation feeling. But then those ones that are working at home, some of them are feeling a little iffy about asking people to pay them right now with all of the people out of work. What is your advice on getting over that stumbling block of, well, there's still clients out there, you just need to go look for them?
Two things to that. One is going back to people, even on an email list, and say, you know, one of the things I've learned about myself is that I'm getting lots of calls from people who used to work with me, asking me for some ideas about what I should be doing. Simply assert that fact and say, you know, if you know of other people who might be interested in having some external support from a coach, I'd like to know about them. I'd like to be able to reach out to them and just say, you know, I'm here to help. I've been in this kind of environment for a long time, and I enjoy working with people. The second thing is, and this applies to any situation, people typically undervalue their services. They do not charge enough. And it's hard to charge a proper fee, especially in times like this where people are somewhat limited or more limited in their ability to pay. But you are valuable. And one of the things you might do during this period of time is sit down and write, why am I valuable? And to whom am I valuable? Who needs me? Is one line of thinking you might take a legal pad down and say, who needs me? What kind of people? Because that's your target audience. Those are people who should be most responsive to you. So that's an exercise to think about as you move ahead. But don't undervalue yourself. Don't cut your fees or your the money you need to make. The right people will pay you the right money.
And I think that there's also some that don't necessarily have work or a service that they can provide online right now. So what should they be focusing on in their business to make sure that they can come out of this still successful?
Well, expense management, stay fresh with clients, run your business like you always ran your business, but maybe a little more aggressively. Think about go through your email list from 2 years ago and see who you used to communicate with that you've sort of maybe forgotten about. Reestablish relationships, say hello. People like to be reached during times like this. They're bored, they're anxious, they're concerned, and they'd love to hear from people. I've been doing that, and it's a lot of fun to reach out to people a long time ago. I've been doing it with people I did search for 20 years ago. How are you? What's up? And they respond, and they actually respond with needs of their own. They're all doing what Kat just alluded to, which is they're all scrambling and figuring out what's next and what they can be doing. One of my clients from 12 years ago, I simply emailed him to say hello, and he came back and said, blah, blah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, things are great, the kids are well, but I'm also involved in resourcing medical equipment. And do you know of people that I could contact, he could contact, to provide medical equipment? So I was one more source for him. Now that I've been of value for him, it's not all wrong for me to go back in a few weeks and say, how'd that go?
Right.
How's it going? What can I do for you?
And I wanted to ask you one other curious thing. You publish under Grantham Press. I'm wondering what the story is behind that name.
Well, Grantham's my middle name, and Grantham is a town in England where Sir Isaac Newton studied and Margaret Thatcher was born. And so I kind of like the name of that sound of that name, Grantham Press. It sounds a little bit booky, erudite, and so I chose it for my press. It's fun to have something that you totally own. It's like a little hobby. I don't do a whole lot with it, but I have it, and it's mine. And I think that particularly in times like this, you want to treasure your kids, your dogs, your home. Make sure your car's in good shape. It's sitting out there, not being driven much. Check the oil. Check your own oil. Make sure you're servicing yourself in your life.
Well, I want to leave everyone with a quote. Chapter 1 starts with George Bernard Shaw line, "Life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself." So before I let you go, do you want to share websites and how to contact you?
Oh, sure. Again, it's Peter Engler. My phone number is 415-601-2444. And EnglerCareerGroup.com is one of my sites. GranthamPress.com is one of the sites. And I even have a site for my pen and inks, EnglerPenAndInk.com, where a lot of the pen and inks I've done for people and for my own pleasure are posted, because it's fun to have yourself and share yourself on the web.
And I think it's important to share other interests besides your main business perspective, because it gives future and potential clients a way to really connect with you and get to know you as a human, and it builds the trust.
Yep. Building trust is pretty important, and it's done with frequency and sincerity.
Well, thank you so much for being my first guest on, what did I name it? Hollywood and Sip.
And good luck to all of you, and stay healthy, please.
Okay, thank you.